Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Welcome to anyone who is lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. Today we are with the very special guest, Julie from the Wine and Reason channel, talking about a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Hi.
And I think I did put a link to where you can get it off Project Gutenberg in the description. If I didn't, I'll try to remember to do so later.
Oh. No, just that's brilliant. I'd forgotten all about Project Gutenberg. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah, so hashtag not sponsored. But yeah, whenever we cover a book in the public domain, if it's on Project Gutenberg, I try to include the link. Because basically what Project Gutenberg does is they take works that are in the public domain and thus, have no copyright on them, and then make free ebooks out of them that you can then go and download onto whatever ebook reader you use.
Yes. And since this book was published originally in 1889, now my copy is a Dover thrift edition that I got from Amazon, which I always have. It's like, so I always have mixed feelings about it because the bookstore that Junk Shop and I worked in, where we met, closed because of Amazon. Like they ran us out of business. So I always feel I feel a wee bit guilty whenever I order a book from Amazon, but sometimes that's how it works. This one, the copyright is 2001. So now given that, again, this is sort of a reprint, I think, for I think it would be largely utilized by schools and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And I think it is actually, in fact, this week, but every September I, devote the month or what little of the month I actually manage to stream on.
Fair.
To literature in honor of Banned Book Week, which I believe is the week that's like around the 20th. So
yeah, that's one of the things I do miss from my teaching days is we would have a whole event that we would have events the whole week.
Yeah.
And at the University of Memphis and in the library, professors would get up and they would read excerpts from their favorite banned book or banned books or banned poems. And it was just so much fun. And yeah. Rebellious nerds. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't think Connecticut Yankee was ever banned.
Yeah, I don't think it was either, but we do know that definitely Huck Finn was.
Yeah.
And I think some other stuff by Twain. And then, of course, if you're a real Twain fanatic, just several years ago, I was about to say just a few years ago. No, it's been several. That giant freaking tome of stuff, and it's just an anthology of everything he wrote but did not publish while he was alive, and he put it in his will that was not to be published until 100 years after his death, because he was writing about contemporaries and peers, and he wanted to make sure that they were all dead before any of this information came out. And so, eaten up by curiosity, I had access to a copy of it and do not anymore. So I only read like a teeny bit. But yeah, so if you're really into Twain, it's expensive, but it might be worth it if you're really.
And like, yeah, you know, we would have talked about Huck Finn because it is the most famously banned Twain book, but that would take a while.
It would take a long time, and also I was really happy that you brought up Connecticut Yankee, because I've taught Huck Finn and I've read it a few times, but I've never read Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and I had always meant to and never did. So can we dive into it?
Yeah. So the story begins in modern day with Mark Twain, meeting the Yankee at while on vacation in the UK. Like, it was like, what's at some castle. Warwick Castle.
Yeah.
And of course, the Yankee then gives him this manuscript, which has, the story, which is, presumably his, the story of his experiences, because 19th century literary tropes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Victorian fiction was very big into the whole found footage thing.
Yeah, very big, and they liked the framed tale. They liked that opening of I met this narrator. I mean, Poe did it. So many writers in the 19th century did this, especially the latter half of the 19th century. It was a very common thing. And they liked that frame tale of I met a stranger, here's that stranger's story, and then at the end,
or I found these documents.
Well,
I mean, like,
I found these diaries.
Frankenstein is like that it's like a Matryoshka doll.
Yeah. Yeah, same with Dracula. Dracula is essentially an anthology of letters and diaries. Diaries.
I've really got to get back to finishing Dracula.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. I know it's not the linear tale that you expect going into it, because we've all seen various film adaptations and all of that. So it's kind of weird when you start it and you're like, a letter from who to who on this date? What is happening? But once you get into it, it's good.
But
really good.
Speaking of lots of adaptations, this is probably got to be the most adapted of Twain's stories.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's always what, like, from what I've seen, it's always they just lift the premise and then do their own thing with it. I haven't actually seen a faithful adaptation.
No, neither have I, and I've seen a couple, and they go far afield. You're right. They're like, oh, neat idea. Let's move on.
Yeah,
and just write our own thing with the neat idea. But yeah, I mean, it starts with this, and this is fascinating, because you guys watching, I'm sure you know this, but just in case you know, in the 19th century, that was the time for spiritualism. That was when the folks were, out debunking, and I could throw out some pretty cool names of people who were trying to debunk spiritualism, and some pretty cool names of people who totally thought it was a thing. But like they said, about transmigration of souls. Do you know about transposition of epochs and epochs? I can't talk this morning. And bodies. It's like this. Okay, so we're just going to accept that transmigration of souls is a thing.
Yeah.
Is it not just gloss right over? And the great thing about this is Twain was a famous skeptic. So he was an atheist. He said it. He's good. There's that famous quote of, like, the whole do you know it, Ring?
No.
I dang it, I'm not going to remember it faithfully. Junk Shop knows it word for word. but they're not here this morning. They're out with friends. So, okay, so it's something to the effect of I wasn't alive millions of years before I was born, and it didn't bother me none, kind of thing. So why would it bother me when I'm dead? Like, like, so it was just kind of that, like, when someone asked him, like, how can you not believe in an afterlife? He was like, why would I miss it? I don't, you know. But it's interesting because the narrator does believe in an afterlife.
Yeah.
In the story. Yeah. We even get his denomination. He's
a Presbyterian.
Uh-huh. Which comes from the originally a Scottish Protestant sect. There we go. I know words. Okay. So anyway, there's a lot, guys. There's so much. I'm sorry, Ring. I'm totally talking. I just talked.
Yeah.
It's your channel. I'm sorry. Yeah. I just want to say there is a lot about religion and the separation of church and state in this book that I am so excited to get into. So.
Oh yeah, because even though the Yankee, who does have a name, but it's only mentioned once in the book.
Yeah, and I can't remember.
Yeah,
I just thought of him as the narrator or the Yankee the whole time.
Yeah, it's Hank Morgan, but for convenience's sake, we'll probably just call him the Yankee.
Yeah, and that's right. When he thinks about his girl back home and her saying, "Oh, Hank," I remember that. But his girl back home was 15. A little weird to me.
And also a phone operator that he would just call.
Yeah, and he thought he was practically engaged. I was like, really?
Yeah.
So there's some problematic stuff in the book as well. And this narrator, as we were talking about right before we went on, this is not a hero's journey story. This narrator he's a protagonist for sure. He's the protagonist, but he's not a hero.
While he is really progressive,
mm-hmm.
the Yankee's a dick.
He kind of is a dick. Yeah. I mean, he refers to these grown people 1,300 years before his civilization as children and superstitious. Now, they were superstitious. Of course they were. They didn't know how anything worked. Well, I should say they didn't know how a lot of things work. I mean, they knew how to build stone structures that a lot of which still exist today. So there's that. But so we're setting Camelot in the 6th century, Common Era. That is, and I'm sure Twain knew this because he mentions at some point that Arthur never existed, and we probably not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had,
like, if I remember right, the best guess is like who we know of as Arthur, King Arthur, mm-hmm. was like an amalgamation of like 3 different guys, one of which was a Roman.
Yeah.
And then that got further distorted by
Mallory.
By later, writers and their notions of what chivalry was.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of like how we in the US refer to the Kennedy administration as Camelot, because we've idealized that administration that was at a very fraught time in our country. It's not like everybody. It's weird to refer to that as Camelot when Vietnam was going on and all of these. Everyone. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of similar to now. The nation was very divided, like extremely divided, and so it's. I've never really understood that, except that maybe because he was assassinated, he had some kind of martyrdom. Not to get off track. I'm just saying that, like, but this romanticized version of chivalry and of courts and knights in the Middle Ages. One thing I love about this book, and also is kind of annoying at times, is how Twain just uses this cocky Yankee to go, these people are idiots.
Yeah.
you could, you could.
But like, yeah, the thing about like the Arthurian knight, you know, the picture of the Arthurian knight is that what they probably have a lot more in common with the picture of the Western cowboy archetype than they have with actual knights.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, some scholars have even said they had more in common with gang members, which is not to diss gang members, but it's like basically if you were a knight, it meant that it's not what it means today. It's the process is completely different. When someone is knighted today, it's because they have done some great service to the country of the UK, and they're knighted and they're given that title. And like Lord or Lady, like Dame Judi Dench, she was elevated to the status of lady because of her artistic work in films. I mean, that's what it was.
And John Lennon would have, but he refused.
He refused because he never wants to be cold again, and he didn't want to have to show up and vote in the House of Lords in winter. So it's very funny. But yeah. So anyway, what they did, like back in the Middle Ages, if you were a knight, it meant that you were an extra son, basically. You were from a possibly noble family. Well, yeah, you were from a noble family, but you weren't the firstborn, so you weren't gonna inherit because of primogeniture.
And you weren't the secondborn.
And you weren't the secondborn.
Those went to the church.
Those went to the church, exactly. And that meant that too many boys. And if you have too many boys, they might start killing each other to try and inherit. So you give them armor and you give them a weapon and you say, go make your fortune as a knight. And basically they were roving gangs of violent guys who hopefully got a patronage and fought in wars and things. And that's what they did. Otherwise, they might just, go burn a village down and take stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I said when I meant that some historians and scholars have compared them to gangs in modern day gangs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but back to the story.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I tangent.
We tangent here. So first, it begins with an excerpt from Mallory.
Yes.
About how Lancelot and Sir Kay fought off these knights. Honestly, it's more to show. I think it's more to like immerse the reader into like the feel, of Arthurian, legends.
Yeah. And I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Because, like that feel is gonna get a bunch of holes poked into it by the time the story's done.
Yeah, Le Morte d'Arthur is basically a really great book written in jail. And because Lord Mallory was somebody's prisoner, if I'm remembering my class correctly, from long, I'm not going to say how many years ago, that I took in college, but yeah, and he was someone's prisoner at the time when he wrote that. Well kept upper class prisoner, but still. But yeah, he basically just wanted to get all of these legends written down in one place.
Yeah.
Because they were scattered and a lot of it was oral history, and he was afraid that they'd be lost. Because there's some great stories in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it is too, like chapter 1 is entitled Camelot, and it's name of the asylum, likely. That's what.
And But Hank Morgan literally gets smacked so hard he's knocked back into the 6th century.
Yeah. It's like that old saying, like, I'm gonna hit you so hard your grandchildren will feel it, except it was the other way. It's like this guy named Hercules at the factory where Hank is some kind of manager.
Yeah.
Or foreman.
Yeah, he's a foreman at the factory.
There you go. He pisses Hercules off, and Hercules hits him so hard that he wakes up in the 6th century and doesn't believe it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like almost to the point of getting himself killed. It comes really close.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil too much. Well, no, we're doing an analysis, so it's fine. But he basically, the only thing that saves him from being burned at the stake is the fact that he happens to know. And this is one of those moments where I was like, okay,
yeah,
I'll believe you because you're Mark Twain, and I have a soft place in my heart for you. But
where he basically pulls a Cortez.
He does. He pulls a Cortez, admittedly so, but he pulls a Cortez, and he just happens to have memorized the date of a total eclipse of the sun that happened in the 6th century, and he happens to be a day away from it. He thought he was 2 days away from it,
but Clarence wasn't so good about dates.
Nah, and why would he have been? Honestly,
he was just a squire, and back then most of the book learning was, for the religious hierarchy.
Yeah, almost entirely. I mean, there were kings who couldn't read and write.
Also, on the note of Clarence, this is one of the ways that the Yankee is like a sanctimonious dick.
Yeah,
because he just names people. Yeah, Clarence isn't Clarence's name.
No, like, your name sounds weird. I'm gonna call you Clarence.
Yeah.
Okay. Really? Okay. I mean, and there's some other problematic language. The line that killed me, and we're so far away from it that I shouldn't even bring it up now. But one line that just made me bark with laughter and also go like, WTF, seriously, was that he'd made tobacco, but he had to make it, but not the good kind of tobacco. He had to do it the way the Indians did it. And that's American Indians, that is Native Americans. Again, written in 1889. But I was just like, oh, really? The real tobacco is not the people who originally made tobacco, like farmed and cultivated tobacco. Seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out he was basically smoking
like willow bark.
Willow bark. Yeah, white willow bark. So he was smoking aspirin. Weird, but okay. And but I'm like, which tribe did that? And I would sincerely like to know. And there's a lot of weird stuff like that in here. He's one thing I love about the narrator, about Hank, is that he is hardcore abolitionist. And I love that about him. He is so, and the stories, the few narrative moments we get with slaves in Camelot are just, I mean, one made me cry. Like I wept. And so it's important, I think, for especially those of us of European descent to remember that our people held slaves, and before we could find other people to enslave, we enslaved each other all the time. And it's wrong. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. So that bit I do love, and I love that one of his ultimate goals was to get rid of slavery.
Well, and the Yankee is actually, just up and taken as a prisoner because Sir Kay just happens along,
Mm-hmm.
when he shows up.
And then lies his ass off in court.
Yeah.
In front of the king. Like Sir Kay like tells this grandiose tale about, and the thing
about
is,
this far off land where everyone dresses like like the Yankee.
Yeah,
and they're all
enchanted.
Yeah, and they're all powerful wizards.
Yes. And they can, I mean, it's so frustrating. Like, because, and the worst part is, there's this moment where everybody's just kind of rolling their eyes and like, they don't, like, they know that Sir Kay is a lying liar, and yet it still leads to a a capital crime conviction for the Yankees. So it,
like, well, or rather being locked up into the dungeon until he can be ransomed.
Okay, right.
Which is, kind of how feudalism happened, is like, if you were lucky enough to be a noble, you got locked away in hopes that people would ransom you. Otherwise, you'd probably just be, pushed into slavery.
Right. And you're right. And it was rare, other than on the battlefield, for nobles to kill other nobles. That was very rare. That almost never happened. So there is that. Also, because they're, like you said, they're worth money, or they're worth alliances.
Yeah.
Pretty much what women were used for. Not only, but there you go. There is something interesting though too, because the Yankee, again, this entire book is just from this one man's point of view. We don't get into any of the other characters' heads really at all. Like, they don't even get to speak to the point of us really understanding them much. And
like the closest, like we can, like, the closest to another viewpoint we get is Clarence. But, and it's kind of interesting because as the Yankee is changing Arthurian society, we see that we see that change reflected in and magnified in Clarence.
Yeah, like the fact that he teaches Clarence how to read and write, and that's huge. That's huge for
like, Clarence, starts out as Sir Kay's squire. But like by the end, he's the Yankees' right hand man, and he's talking and acting just like a 19th century person would.
Yeah, or and he's writing a newspaper, at least good enough for backwoods Arkansas. I gotta say, as a Southerner, I am offended. I was like, whatever, Missouri. But no, it's okay.
Yeah,
I was jokingly offended.
Yeah. And arguably, what Mark, one of the ways you can read this is Mark Twain is satirizing the antebellum South.
Oh, so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's satirizing the antebellum South. He's satirizing his own society of the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I at one point I wanted to make a list. I was like, how? And there's so many laugh out loud moments in this book. It's so funny, and I didn't pick up on it right away. And then I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh, he's been doing this the whole, like, because it's been a minute since I've like dissected a book and not just like sat back and read a book for fun, so it took me a minute to catch on, and I was like, oh, this is hardcore satire. Okay, now I'm with it. I'm with you. But like for example, like when the Yankee like first said that the people were naive and they were all ready to believe lies, I was like, or they don't think the person's lying, or they don't, like, I was being very literal for a minute, and then I was like, oh no, he just Like, he knows that ogres don't exist.
Yeah.
You know, these people don't. They don't know that ogres don't exist. They don't know that dragons don't exist.
Yeah.
So and it is funny, and I do love, and the thing about education, gosh, I should have flagged my stuff that I made notes about. We definitely get the might makes right stuff. Again, Arkansas. What is the deal with Arkansas? Okay. So on page 15, it reads, well, it was touching to see the queen blush and smile and look embarrassed. This is at the joust. And happy, and fling furtive glances at Sir Lancelot that would have got him shot in Arkansas to a dead certainty. So that sounds like more like a compliment.
Yeah.
Weirdly. You know, I'm anti-gun, I'm anti-violence, but it sounded kind of like a compliment. I mean, she is the queen. It's treason for her to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there is a heartbreaking moment way later in the book when he and the king are traveling as common people together, and the Yankee asked King Arthur, should we not tell the queen what we're doing? And the king said, Lancelot is around, she won't notice that I'm gone. Like something to that effect. And it's just like, oh man.
But so while he's in prison, he decides to save his, skin by pulling a Cortez.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Ring is going to keep the plot on track, and I'm just going to jump all over the place.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, he decides to pull a Cortez. So please explain what that means.
Well, or a Columbus, one or the other.
Or a Columbus. Yeah. Damn it.
Well, no, I seriously can't remember who it was that did that.
I want to say it was Cortez, but don't quote me on that.
Or it could have been one or the other, could have been both. But
Twain alludes to Cortez, and I think he probably had a better history of the colonies and all of that, and imperialism, that education than I did.
So, anyways, a Spanish explorer conquistador, could have been Cortez, could have been Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Basically got out of a fix by using foreknowledge of a coming eclipse to feign deity.
Yeah. Pretended to cause it.
Yes. So the Yankee happens to have, remembered reading in an almanac that, there was an eclipse on such and such a date around the time he showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's like, okay, if this eclipse happens, then I know I'm in King Arthur, then I know I actually was shot back in time, and I'm not just in some sort of loony bin.
Right. Which is not, and the Yankee talks about reason a lot.
Yeah.
And that there's a fallacy there. He could be in an asylum and still know that, and still in his delusion think that that's a confirmation. So,
or there could be, some other eclipse that, a modern eclipse that happens, and he could still just be in an asylum.
Yep.
Like convenient plot affirmation, because 19th century literary tropes.
Again, and it works. I mean, it's not. Sorry. Oh, and I gotta say that him almost like they're tying him to the stake, they're piling up the wood, all of that.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. That is Mark Twain was nothing if not a great writer. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, we have a lot of book left to go, so I know he's not going to die here. This is terrifying. So believe me, I was so happy when it turned out that dude had the date wrong. I was so happy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So he says, on such and such a date, if you harm me, I will blot out the sun and curse England to starve because all the crops will fail because of no sun.
And destroy the whole world, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he threatens the destruction of the sun, and then through that, the entire world. I thought that was a little over the top, but okay.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I've never been tied. I've never been brought out into a square naked and tied to a stake with somebody intent on burning me until I'm dead. So I shouldn't judge, but wow.
Well, then of course Merlin has the bright idea of, well, he can't do that if we kill him first.
Yeah, that was Clarence's idea. I
thought it was Merlin.
No, well, Clarence comes up to him as they're dragging him out, the Yankee, as they're dragging him out, and he says, it was a small lie, but I convinced them that if that your powers were going to come to their zenith tomorrow, and if they tried to kill you today, they'd be spared. So just make a little darkness and don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because Clarence believes this completely, almost faints out of when the Yankee is describing what he'll do if they set fire to the stage, and it's like, and so Clarence is like, just make a little darkness, just a little bit, just to show them, just to scare them enough, and then they won't kill you. And aren't I so clever?
Yeah, and luckily, luckily for the Yankee, Clarence had the date wrong.
Yep.
And the eclipse happens.
Yep.
And of course, the Yankee ends up spending the time of the eclipse waffling about whether or not he'll actually end it. Because no one can stop an eclipse, just like no one can start an eclipse.
No, and I mean the king is like begging him, like, make it stop. We let you go. Get him princely raiments and all of that nonsense. Yeah. All that stuff is like, yo, you're a magician far beyond anything. And so he strikes up this deal with King Arthur. I'm gonna make it like he's gonna be his right hand man. He's gonna be in a higher position than Merlin.
Yeah.
Merlin. And it's like, okay. And but of course he can't stop the eclipse, so he basically has to just he has to vamp until the sun starts to reappear, which is
and of course after this is done, everybody's like, hey, show us another miracle.
And he's like,
and Merlin starts spreading some rumors that he might just be a fraud, which I mean, he kind of is.
He is. And the funny thing is, I mean, he's as much of a fraud as Merlin is.
Yeah.
Merlin may believe that he can actually do magic. I mean, I used to read tarot cards, and I thought it actually meant something. So I get it. Like, you can believe that you're actually doing something when you're not doing anything. And just for the sake of my own conscience, I never charged anyone for that. I only, but it was funny how the readings were so much more accurate when they were for friends of mine whose lives I knew about. Yeah. Funny.
But
that. Anyway.
And I mean, well, the thing is, like, Merlin had, Merlin is a con artist who believes his con and has his belief to back it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Yankee is a con artist who knows it's all bunkum, but he backs it up with science.
Yes, and that's the one thing that they can't disprove. Like much later on, the miracle at the well.
Yeah.
In the Holiness Valley or Valley of Holiness.
But to put Merlin in his place, he says, okay, put up all the enchantments you can around your tower, and then I'm gonna blow it up.
Yeah. On a specific date.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, no, what he does is he waits until it looks like there's going to be a thunderstorm.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
and says, "Okay, I'll do it now."
But he still has to get it all ready. So so he has to put it off, and it's luckily it's been a stormy. Well, I mean, it's the UK. It's raining all the time. So he excuse me, he fashions a lightning rod.
Well, like he gave Merlin a certain amount of weeks to set up his enchantments.
Right.
And while that was doing that, he had set up a lightning rod on Merlin's tower and also buried a bunch of explosives that connected with the lightning rod directly under the foundation.
Yeah, he essentially made dynamite, and I'm not sure that it really told us how he did that. Did it tell us how he did that?
No.
So he just managed to somehow make like black powder without. That's weird. And there were no. Yeah, okay. And also, he was absolutely counting on the lightning rod working because there are no matches in Camelot.
Yeah.
Like, now it's funny that, well, also the size of this explosion, it's not the kind of explosion you could light safely with flint and steel and get away. So, and he had warned everyone, including, because all these peasants are like coming to see the miracle of the guy who blackened out the sun. It's just so weird. I do. Yeah, but it was so I had that moment though, like I had a moment when I was reading that, because it said that the tower was like over 400 years old then.
Yeah.
And it had been a Roman tower, and I was like, oh, but like the part of me that was a history minor was just, ouch.
Yeah.
And that was something actually that I wanted to ask Noodle about, because I was so get back to me, Noodle, how you felt about that, because it was probably more painful for Noodle than it was for me. But yeah, I had a hard time with that. It was just rough. Anyway, oh no, I wrote a note in highlighter, so of course I can't read it now. Why did I do that? So there's a lot of comic relief in here too. It's okay. Oh, here's my list. I did make a list.
Yeah.
Of what he was satirizing. So by chapter 9, the tournament, I said satirizing capitalism, organized religion, and monarchy, social hierarchies, even as the narrator who openly wants profit and power from from some of these things. Like, he's using these existing monolithic institutions that control everything at the time to start up his little enterprises, but we don't know the education part. We don't know. Up until this point, like at this point, it just seems that he's just trying to survive and also being a little selfish.
And do it, and basically he's setting up his power base because he knows that staying in power is basically the only thing that'll keep him alive. It's might makes right society, and he's not of good breeding, right? He's not of noble birth. So the fact that he's a magician is the only thing that he has. So he has all he has is the fact that he's the boss.
The boss,
he is Sir Boss.
Sir Boss. Yeah, I love that. I really wish, because there's so many archaic words in here, I had to look a bunch up.
Yeah.
And I know a wee bit of Middle English, but there's a lot of archaic. Anyway, there was one that was kind of funny and weird, and I was like, that in this context, that cannot mean what I think it means. I had to look it up. It did not mean what I thought it meant. Yeah. This. Anyway, my point is that I loved the Sir Boss thing, but I really wanted to know what word and I understand why Twain didn't provide one. It's fine, but it would have been cool if he'd given an archaic word that could mean that. But maybe it just wasn't a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that he uses a priest who used to keep the books for the undertakers. He says undertaker department of his church. It's so hilarious, this mixture of modern and archaic language. That they to this day, it's not an undertaker department. It's just parish records. If you're baptized in a parish and if you die in a parish, they record that and they record the date and everything. Then they've been doing that since the Middle Ages. But it is funny when he talks about how much it costs.
Yeah.
Even then, and like the average funeral today is somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000, depending on how you do it. If you want to be buried and such. Green funerals, everybody. Just saying.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And it turns out, and I do like this satirization of like, these same social grifts have been running for a long time.
Yeah.
This is nothing new, right?
And but he's setting up his little project in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a tournament where Clarence provides the first bit of journalism in Arthurian England, and the Yankee insults Sir Sangramore.
Accidentally. He's actually insulting someone else. Was it Sir Dinadan, the one who tells the terrible jokes?
Yeah.
Don't be a bad humorist or a bad poet. People don't like it. If you are, just keep that shit to yourself. Stuff to yourself, sorry. But he tells, there is this horrible old lame joke that's been that the Yankee was actually shocked that it was even 13 centuries old, and he was like, "Oh, not again."
Yeah.
And later on, he's like, he thinks about like, I'd rather be dead than hear this anecdote one more time. And then he thought about eternity and how many people who've died probably know this lame joke that he never wants to. It's interesting. It's a weird running theme.
About how like the worst jokes always seem to last the longest.
Yes, essentially, yes. Yeah. And for somebody who was known for being quite witty, and like I said, there's a lot of laugh out loud moments, so many in this book, and Mark Twain is quite witty. That almost smelled to me of a little bit of like the author creeping into his character just a little bit, being like, I cannot stand stupid bad jokes that aren't good. Like you think this is easy? It's not easy.
But so Sir Sangramore challenges the Yankee to a duel.
Yeah, because the Yankee says, I hope to gracious he's killed, meaning Sir Dinadan, but the person who overhears it is Sir Sangramore, and he thinks the Yankee's talking.
Yeah, because Sir Sangramore was just about to joust.
Right. He was like standing right there, or seated right there on his horse or whatever. Yeah. So, but this is funny.
Yeah.
Why is this duel not happening right away?
Because two reasons. One, Sir Sangramore was due to go out grailing.
Yeah, go a grailing.
And secondly, while Sangramore was out grailing, they figured that the Yankee should go out and do some knight errantry to get his status to where it'd be something more of an equal duel.
Right. The king was very concerned that when Sir Sangramore got back from excuse me, from grailing. And I like the comparison to the Northwest Passage. Like people would go to try and find it, and then you'd have to send expeditions out to try and find them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very true. But apparently when knights would go out searching for the Holy Grail, and why they thought they'd find it in the UK, I have no idea. But
well, I mean, there was that like myth about Joseph of Arimathea like taking the Grail to England because he was like he was a tin merchant.
You're right. There's a whole hymn about it. And did those feet in ancient times, and I'll stop there. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a whole thing. Okay, yeah. So you're right. They had a reason, I guess, to think it might be there under a bush or something. So they go. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. It just seems so bizarre. It's like I'm gonna go hunt for a holy relic, and I have no idea where it might be. I have no sonar equipment. I don't even have basic archaeological tools. I'm just gonna go tramp around the countryside for.
I'm gonna traipse around the countryside, slaying monsters.
Yeah.
Until I maybe find the Grail.
Yeah, it's very like it's kind of like what happens conveniently for us in D&D is like when you go slay a big boss dragon, and then it turns out there's something in that dragon's lair, and it's in its loot that it's been lording over that the party really needs, and it's a rare magical item like that. That's kind of where we get that from, I think. Or
like how I like to call the myth of El Dorado the greatest pest control in human history. All you need to do is go up to your local conquistador infestation, tell them that El Dorado's just over just over the hill, and then wait for the screaming from the jungle to stop.
There you go. Yeah, that would have been good. Absolutely. Okay, so this is interesting in chapter 10. So like you said, he's situating his power base. He tells King Arthur, well, I do need some time. There's some more government things I'm working on. So Arthur agrees that he doesn't have to go out adventuring quite yet, because dude won't be back for 4 years, minimum 4 years. So he's doing that, and so in chapter 10, Beginnings of Civilization, towards the bottom of the page, he says, he writes, it says, everybody could be any kind of a Christian he wanted to. There was perfect freedom in that matter. But I confined public religion teaching to the churches and the Sunday schools, permitting nothing of it in my other educational buildings. Oh, sorry. What I skipped over is he started a bunch of schools.
Yeah, that he called man factories.
He called man factories, yes. But what was great about it was he was teaching everybody in them to read and write. And he was also teaching them specific skills that actually, do I want to get into the Addy model right now? No, I don't. I really don't. But there's a way of like teaching people in manufacturing specific skills where they don't necessarily have to know the whole picture. Like they don't have to know exactly how a jet engine works, for example, but they can build part of one. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's kind of going like that. But he also made Sunday schools. Yeah. But that part, like anyone could be any sort of Christian he wanted. It almost, the first time I read it, it sounded like he meant in Camelot, and I was like, I don't think that's right. And because he kept saying he was afraid of the church, and also just historically, I don't think there were any Protestant sects yet. There weren't. Yeah, no. It's going to be a long time till Martin Luther. So, excuse me. So he introduces some Protestant notions into 6th century England, which is kind of fascinating. And if, go ahead.
and notions of essentially the separation of church and state, because he's like, anyone should be free to believe how they want, but the quickest way to tyranny is an established church.
An established church, and he capitalizes that every time. Phrase, capital E established, capital C church. He is very against this, and he even talks about modern day Englishmen that he's met and who talk about how free they are, and he's like, nope, you're not. And it's such a beautiful American idea. And I kept thinking about Christian dominionism, and I'm just like, and then there's this moment later on in the book where he says something about, like, once you have an established church, like, he doesn't say liberty or something, but he was like, the nation dies, because the nation is the people, and the people have to, and like it's very beautiful. Okay, here we go. I think I found it. I may or may not have found it, but so he writes us Okay. Spiritual wants and instincts are as various in the human family as our physical appetites, complexions, and features. And a man is only at his best morally when he is equipped with a religious garment whose color and shape and size most nicely accommodate themselves to the spiritual complexion, angularities, and stature of the individual who wears it. And besides, I was afraid of a united church. It makes a mighty power, the mightiest conceivable. And then when it by and by gets into selfish hands, as it is always bound to do, it means death to human liberty and paralysis to human thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I got goosebumps when I read that. And that's why I highlighted and made you all listen to me quote that big, huge sentence. But wow. And so true.
And, and the Yankee admits, in the manuscript that he is a Presbyterian, but he's not spreading Presbyterianism.
Right.
He's like, I'm not going to, his point is, it is up for the person to choose to go with what spirituality fits them the best.
Right. And the only thing but again, I think that the Yankee could only think this. I think he could only think this way, given the time in which it happened. And if this means anything to anybody watching at any point, I was very much a new historicist when I was studying literature back way back in college and grad school. So that just means that you can't fully remove a text from the time in which it was written. You can absolutely expose the problematic stuff, like how Twain uses he for everyone, but that was grammatically correct at the time.
Yeah,
it sucks because it's totally sexist, and there's a very much a dichotomous gender situation there that we can talk about. But yeah, for sure, and I would love to. But it's what he says is anyone can be any kind of Christian they want. So immediately I couldn't help but think, so no Jews, just no Jews. You're not allowed to be Jewish or anything else, no Muslims, no neo-pagans, nothing. Okay.
You can have any religion you want as long as it's cross-shaped.
Yes, as long as it's the dead guy on a stick, you're good. Otherwise, no. And that, but I mean, it's kind of, again, it goes back to that thing about why the Yankee isn't a hero. He is not. Okay, so going by Campbell's definition of like the hero's journey, he sets out and then brings something of value back to his civilization. This man is trying to bring an older civilization up to the status of what he considers to be civilization. Completely different story. So we don't have that hero's journey. And also, he's not a hero because he is not more moral than most people.
It's actually pretty refreshing, especially for a Victorian novel.
Yeah, true.
To have such a flawed protagonist.
Mm-hmm. He's definitely sexist.
Well,
so sexist.
like we've been kind of harping on, he's a sanctimonious dick.
Yeah,
And
he's
he
very
thinks
much a
that
mess.
he thinks that he knows better and knows more than everyone around.
Everyone. And the thing is, he does in some ways.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't. He's bad at empathy.
Yeah.
Except for when he sees. He has moments later on where he's very good at empathy. The one where the man was being tortured and he felt such compassion for him and his wife. Although again, very.
We'll put a pin in the empathy
Yeah, let's
one
put a pin in that.
because there's a very good example that we're actually kind of coming up to.
Oh, okay, great. Let's go there.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Really quickly.
Yeah.
The despotism of heaven is the one absolutely perfect government. How did you feel when you read that line, my friend? I know how I felt. I felt really angry.
Yeah.
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 So again,
God doesn't want, God doesn't want worship robots. So, but the reward is becoming a worship robot.
It's so weird. I mean, I don't know. The way he justifies it is, well, God is a perfect. He actually says the perfectest. Oh, that hurt me. And it's just grammar is different now. Language is a living thing, but the perfectest human. That was an interesting word choice.
Yeah.
Because Twain could have written being. Yeah. Now we know Mark Twain in his. This is not Mark Twain's point of view. It's the character he's writing. Mark Twain was an atheist.
Yeah.
But like to he was an atheist before it was cool. But it's still not cool. It's still rough. But anyway, no. But yeah, for him to write that was amazing. But the point was like, yeah, you can have a despot. You can have despotism if that being is perfect and therefore has, you could assume a lot, maybe depending on what you mean by perfect, but at the same time, it's still, it's like Crowley's line, but then you've got to deal with eternity. Like, how do you even deal with that?
Or like how, a good, monarchy only really works good when there's a good ruler on the throne.
Exactly. You get an imbecile or a bad ruler.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not good. Mm-hmm. And that is the point that he makes.
There. Yeah. And then out come the guillotines.
Yeah, out come the guillotine. And what was so great is right before he brought up the French Revolution, I was just thinking French Revolution time, you guys. It's like so that was fun.
Yeah. But anyways, so Alessandra, or as we shall know her, Sandy, because the Yankee is a sanctimonious dick and just names people.
Just renames people for fun.
Shows up with a sob story about a bunch of princesses, that were kidnapped by ogres.
And are being held in a castle against their will.
Yeah. And King Arthur decides that now is the perfect time for the Yankee to go out and earn his spurs.
Yep. And I will say the sentence that introduces all of that is there never was such a country for wandering liars. And I highlighted it because it immediately made me think of social media today. Yeah. I'm like, oh honey, just wait. You think it's bad? You think it's bad in 1889? Oh no. Yeah. Okay.
And Sandy's got a bit of a motor mouth.
Yeah, Sandy likes to talk. The Yankee does not appreciate this.
But it does seem to grow on him a bit.
I honestly can't tell if it grows. Eventually, yeah, I would say it
Yeah,
does.
eventually.
In when he finally stops berating her for it is after she saves his ass a couple of times.
Yeah.
With her gift of gab. Like she actually manages because she speaks the language, like literally, like
Yeah.
Not just archaically, but she understands that society that she's in, and she's nobility.
And well, also, this is one of the bits that amused me like the most on the read through is just bouncing, the back and forth where she's talking all, Shakespearean.
Yeah.
And he's, rattling back with back home country 19th century slang.
Yeah, and then she spends like a paragraph or 8 like apologizing for not understanding what he's saying and her own feebleness. And he's talking in terms of like the stock market. I learned shit about the stock market reading this book. It was weird. And or at least, basic notions.
Or, and how he's, calling all the knights cowboys.
Which is not inaccurate, actually. Yeah. I thought that was a good, like we talked about earlier. I thought it was a good analogy. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it's like he never thinks to put himself in her shoes. It's like, why are you talking like that? Just say knight. You know the word. We know that you know the word.
Yeah.
And just to for anyone who hasn't read this, just to give you an idea how insulting it is that he just renames people. Her full title is Demoiselle Alexandre La Cotelard or Coteloise or Cotelard. I'm sorry, it's been a long time since I've spoken French at all. But that basically means Lady Alessandre of the Carte Loise. It's Loise for those of you who speak French, but there's no accent aigu on the end. Okay, so it's anyway. So she is a titled French lady, or descended from French people, which happened a lot because England and France were always fighting.
Well, I mean, arguably it shouldn't so arguably it's anachronistic, but only as anachronistic as all of Arthurian mythos is, because with it being in the 6th century, I think England is still under the I think a bunch of England is still under the Danelaw.
You're right. Because it's still
the Norman conquest technically hasn't happened yet.
Right, fair. No, you're right. It's like Lancelot de Lac.
Yeah.
Like he's not. I mean, his name is completely anachronistic. And all the French ones, anything with du or anything like that in front of it, in front of the name. It's You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
But he is still an ass for doing this. It bugs me.
And so, he has some, they encounter some workers. He ends up capturing knights by smoking a pipe.
Yeah. They think he's a dragon.
Yeah.
He does have one moment. Here we go. He did have a moment right before they set out where he did have a second of empathy.
Yeah.
But it was, I'm not even sure. You know what? No, it wasn't empathy. He was thinking about himself, and he was thinking about his 15-year-old switchboard girl back home.
Yeah.
I know, different time, but still. Anyway, but that is the way we are made. We don't reason where we feel, we just feel.
Yeah.
And he can admit that about himself, but it's like he's not admitting it about anybody else. I don't know.
So
Yeah, please continue.
And eventually they come to the castle,
The castle, yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a swine stable.
A swine stable. It is. It's a swine yard. The ogres are the guys who keep the swine, who
Yeah, are
keep
the
the
swine
dogs.
herds.
Yeah, swine
And
herds.
the nobles are all pigs.
All pigs. All sows, apparently.
Yeah.
Or as far as we know. They all have ladies' names anyway. And quite literally titled ladies' names. And Alicent or Sandy, she's so excited when she sees them. And there's this moment as the reader where you're not sure who to believe.
Yeah.
Because our narrator is not the most reliable dude, but at the same time, it's freaking hilarious. And I was like, is this a metaphor, or is this this is one of those like literal situational metaphors where some aristocracy are swine, man. Like there was a real eat the rich moment because they're literally pigs. It was weird. And so go ahead.
So he buys the swine off the swine herds.
Mm-hmm.
And they very with great difficulty and shenanigans managed to herd the swine to this random house.
Yeah,
and set them loose in the house.
I thought they were back at Camelot for a minute, and then I was like, because he was like, and then we sent the servants out to go get the ladies who had wandered astray, probably looking for truffles, who knows? And and they get them all, and Sandy insists that they all be like seated at the high table, and she serves them all food. I'm like, how is this? I'm just imagining her putting pewter plates down on the ground, thinking she's putting them on the table.
And this is where we get something of a glimmer of empathy from the Yankee, where he realizes, oh, she really believes this, and I've been kind of a dick for judging her.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, he called. I mean, earlier he said, measured by modern standards, they were merely modified savages. Those people, and it's just, dude, slow your roll, man. They're still they're human beings, but it absolutely, that is when he because initially he decides to go along with her delusion, his word. And he's not wrong, as it turns out. He's not. The servants confirm that. No, those are pigs. And if he does have a moment where it's like she was so distraught, she was so happy, she was crying when she saw them all, and then when they saved them, it was rough, that part, because you have to wonder, what is really going on, because Sandy seems completely fine up until this moment.
So a truncated so the quote, my land, the power of training, of influence, of education. It can bring up a body to believe anything. I had to put myself in Sandy's place to realize she was not a lunatic. Yes, and put her in mind to demonstrate how easy it is to seem a lunatic to a person who has not been taught as you have been taught.
Thank you. Yes, I highlighted the same bit. Thank you for finding it before I did. No, you're absolutely right. And this is why any of our friends who are atheists watching, this is why religious people aren't crazy. Y'all, they're not. I'm crazy. I have more diagnoses than your average. Than your average religious person. So, excuse me. But he's right. Like, the power of indoctrination is strong. And it's hard. I was listening to Scathing Atheist just the other day, and there was No Illusions in the Diatribe said that he has people. I'm going to paraphrase for a second, and then I've got a quote. But he said something to the effect of, "I have people come up to me at conventions and stuff, and they talk about with embarrassment about how long it took them to break out of a religion." And he said, "This is the quote: I stand in awe of you." And he said that because he went on to explain, like, he wasn't raised that religion. So
Yeah.
it wasn't hard for him. He didn't feel like he didn't go through a huge existential crisis to get out of something that he was hardcore indoctrinated into. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, like, honestly, those of us who get out of really serious, like, I mean, your family's connected to it. Everyone you know is connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, indoctrination is serious, and so is your culture surrounding it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could lead you to believe that pigs are ladies.
Yep. And
that was kind of bad. I'm sorry. I was going so well, and then
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's why, suggested we put a pin in the whole empathy bit, because we were coming up to that moment of empathy
You're right.
that the Yankee has for Sandy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I might be skipping back a little bit, and I apologize because I'm out of order always. But there's
You're out of order. I'm out of order. This whole stream is out of order.
Stream is out of order. But I will say, I'm jumping back to when they were talking to the freemen on the road, and Sandy's like, "I will not eat with them. They are beneath me." And she goes off to the side, and he's like, "Seriously?" And he sits down, and and he's freaking hungry because he didn't bring any food. Because
he
wanted to.
Well, like, he had a sandwich in his helmet, but he couldn't get the helmet off.
No, he tried, but they stopped him right before.
Yeah.
And the dogs got it. But yeah, he had his handkerchief and his tobacco and his pipe and stuff and his helmet. You're right, and money.
Yeah.
But he couldn't take it off for himself.
Yeah.
And I did love that bit of realism. I really did. That was horrible. It was horrible to read, just thinking of, can you imagine sleeping in a forest in full armor, all the bugs?
Yeah.
I was like sitting outside last night, outside on my back porch, reading that part.
Yeah.
And there were mosquitoes and stuff, and I was just like, oh God, no. Anyway. But so he's talking to so he takes one of these freemen aside. And again, we're talking about that indoctrination. And these guys are building a road with no pay, having to leave their own farms alone for 3 days. And they have to if they have any sons old enough to work, they have to bring them too. So nothing's getting done in the fields at home, right? For 3 days a week, which is huge if you're a farmer. Anybody who gardens out there, you know this. Yeah. And he says, he asked one of the guys if it had ever occurred to him that if every man could have a say in the government, what that might look like. Like, would they vote for a monarchy, excluding everyone else's family? And they honestly were, I don't know. And then he said, one of the men asked him, "Have you ever seen a country like this?" And he says, "I said I had seen one, and that it would last until it had an established church." Yeah. And of course, he's talking about the U.S. in the future. And I wrote in the book in pen, which I normally try not to do that because it's bad for your books, but I wrote, "If Christian dominionism wins, America dies." Essentially, because I got chilled. I'm like, Mark Twain has been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
If he was alive now, I really would love to know what he would think about all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
I also realized that we had skipped over the bit where he encounters Morgan Le Fay.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
I thought that was later. Okay, no, we definitely need to talk about that. he also uses the term a New Deal.
Yeah.
In the 1880s, way before the Depression. I actually wrote, this is spooky. That's where I wrote this is spooky. Like, because it was just, and I also love just this one last thing from when he's talking to the freemen. He says, the kind of loyalty, he says, my kind of loyalty was loyalty to one's country, not to its institutions or its office holders. The country is the real thing. And then he says that anyone who holds his peace, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and does not agitate for change when things go wrong. That's why I'm paraphrasing. He is a traitor. Quote, that he may be the only one who thinks he sees this decay does not excuse him. It is his duty to agitate anyway, and it is the duty of the others to vote him down if they do not see the matter as he does.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh God. Okay. I mean, I know it's just freaky.
So,
okay. Morgan Le Fay.
Go ahead and start on Morgan Le Fay. I'll be right back.
Oh, sure. Okay. Hi, guys. I am not One Ring, and this is not my channel, but I'm Julie, and we are talking about a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, and I am in chapter 16, Morgan Le Fay. Now, this character, when I read Le Mort d'Arthur in college, and when I read The Mists of Avalon in college, and when I was a neo-pagan for way too long. No, sorry if I'm not trying to offend neo-pagans. I love y'all. You're awesome. Just wasn't good for me, personally. I mean, it wasn't bad either, but okay, tangent, stop doing that. So, chapter 16, Morgan Le Fay. She's one of my favorite characters in all of the Arthurian legends. But she's also, she's an interesting character because she can be read many different ways. And the way the Yankee sees her is completely as a villain who has a silver tongue and is not above murdering someone in an instant. There we go. I was just giving them a brief summary of Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah. Well, she has the band leader hung, and he agrees to after he hears the band leaders playing.
Yeah, he agrees to it. That's another thing. And he, on one level, he's trying to, hang on, we'll get to it. Because the first thing, he's talking to her, and a page of hers comes up with something on a tray. And in his attempt to do the whole courtly, bowing with a tray thing, that would be really tricky, he accidentally brushed her knee with his hand, and she pulls out a dirk from somewhere and slaughters the young man right in front of the whole court and everything, and then calls for servants to come clean up the mess.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And again,
she's like, oh, it's fine. His family will get the money for him.
Yeah, like later, his grandmother comes in towards the end of dinner when everybody's drunk and curses her by the name of God, curses Morgan Le Fay. And she tries to have that old woman burnt at the stake right then and there. That's when the Yankee intervenes. And that's when later he acquiesces to the band leader and also the rest of the band all being hanged for playing a version of an early version of the Sweet By and By. Is that it?
Yeah.
That old hymn. And he's like, I agree. The music's terrible. Yeah, hang them. Yeah. And also you're a psychopath. So I'm just gonna, he doesn't say that, but it's implied. And he does talk about that training, that notion that, she thought it was, because he mentioned the crime for killing that young man, that youth, and not thinking anything of it. And yet she's afraid of going to hell if she doesn't torture a confession out of this other guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, but what about the other crime? And she said, that's not a crime. I was going to pay for him.
Yeah.
But
well, though, arguably, all of the murder and torture, isn't the worst. It like all of the murder and torture isn't the worst thing she's done.
Yeah.
Because there was the one prisoner who had really pissed her off, and he was given a cell where he could look out and see his house. And every so often a coffin would leave from his house
And
until and a funeral procession until there was, by his calculation, only one member of his family alive, and he didn't know who it was.
Yeah, he didn't know if it was his wife or one of their children.
Yeah, and then when when the Yankee releases him, because the Yankees like made it a point to like just clear out all the dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
He goes home and he finds that no one had died.
Yeah.
And
his wife is still waiting for him.
Yeah.
And he has grandchildren
and that the procession of coffins was literally just a psychological torture devised by Morgan Le Fay
for over 20 years.
Yeah.
This went on for over 20 years, and just abominable. She is, like I mentioned while you were gone, I said that, if you want a different take on, well, I didn't say if you want a different take, but if you do want a different take on Morgan Le Fay, read The Mist of Avalon. That's an interesting book. But in this book, she is evil. And again, he talks about that, he says training, but she's born into a system where, because she's nobility, she has every right. Later on, King Arthur refers to common people as dirt.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, man, but they're your people. Like, you're supposed to provide for them. There's what the, but Oh, what about the lovers, the bride and groom in the cell?
Oh yeah, that were so psychologically broken after they were released. They couldn't even function.
No, and they didn't even recognize each other.
Yeah.
It was oh God. All of that was heartbreaking. And I thought she axe murdered those last 5 prisoners. I really did.
Yeah.
The photograph, and she pretended she understood what that meant and ran at them with an axe. And I was like, what? And then the next page, it's a new chapter, and he's like, we were on the road again. And I'm like, what are you doing to me? Twain, Clemens, you bastard. And but he does let you know later what happened. And it's sad, but it's not they were not axe murdered by Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, and the thing is, like, while she is like a complete and total psychopath, she's also like one of the few people in the setting that are shown as something nearing an intellectual equal to the Yankee.
True. That's true. She is. He even remarks on it, that she's extremely intelligent, and it's a weird set of rules, because you've got the catechism and you have the Middle Ages hierarchy, and everything she does is calculated to make her immortal soul safe, no matter how much murdering and torturing happens.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling, but at the same time, what and I don't know everything, but I was raised Roman Catholic, so what I do know of the medieval church, she's not wrong. This all fits. And I did not mind the Yankee insulting the church the way that he did. He's not wrong. There's a reason I don't go anymore. Yeah. There are lots of reasons, but that's definitely one of them. It was just, I do like though that he, I don't know, part of me, I'm not sure I felt weird liking this, but I did like it when he did meet some really nice monks, and he admitted that as much as he hated the Roman Catholic Church, he did have to admit that there were good priests and good monks on the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah. I think this was at the Valley of Holiness, which
Yeah,
actually we're coming up to right now. So might as well.
So segue.
Yeah. So after the Yankee delivers the noble women
To noble women
to the random house in the middle of nowhere.
And they're from, and Sandy explains, it's fine, their relatives will come get them from all over the earth. And I'm just thinking about that poor family that's, for whatever reason, wasn't home, and they're going to come home and find a bunch of pigs just hanging out in the middle of their dining hall.
Yeah, that their servants will end up convincing them that they are actually ensorcelled nobles.
Enchanted. Okay. Oh, wait, really quickly, before we leave Morgan Le Fay, though.
Yeah.
I gotta. This is one of those things that it's so binary and certainly not feminist that it bugged me, but I don't think we could have expected more, certainly not from the Yankee, not from this character. And I'm not entirely certain we could have expected more from Mark Twain, given the time in which he lived.
Yeah.
So again, that's me. But and then I also, there was a little bit of, I loved most of this line. I loved most of this couple of sentences. So this is after, so she was this guy's accused of killing a royal stag. She's having him tortured on the rack because if he doesn't confess, if he did do it and he doesn't confess and doesn't get absolution, he'll go to hell, and that puts her soul in peril.
Yeah.
Medieval logic, y'all. It makes no sense. Don't try and make sense of it. So, but what also happens if he confesses and is convicted is that she, by right, gets his land, and his wife and children are just paupers, just out. They have nothing.
Which is why he's not confessing out of concern for his wife.
Yeah, he's not confessing out of concern for his wife, and his wife and their newborn baby are there, and she's begging him to confess to spare him any more pain, because at this point all she sees for him that can happen is a quick death.
Yeah.
And it's terrible and it's sad, but luckily the Yankee walks in there with the authority of King Arthur and stops the torturing. And he says he's trying to understand the situation. He finally gets it. It finally clicks, and he says, "You stood by them like a man, and you, true wife and true woman that you are." Okay, I'm wincing a little bit at that, but okay, it's fine. You would have brought him release from torture at cost to yourself of slow starvation and death. Well, it humbles a body to think this is also bad. What your sex can do when it comes to self-sacrifice. Okay, great. I'll book you both for my colony. You'll like it there. It's a factory where I'm going to turn groping and grubbing automata into men. Okay, fine. Again, still being an ass. Definitely being a sexist ass.
Yeah.
But why mention just the woman's self-sacrifice? The man was sacrificing a hell of a lot on that rack.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing, it pulls all of your joints out of the socket. It breaks. It's horrible. I'm sorry. I'll stop talking about it. But yeah, if you've ever studied medieval torture devices, they're terrible. Okay, so we can leave Morgan Le Fay now, because her dungeons are awful, and I don't even want to go back to that chapter. It's chapter 18 if anyone's interested.
Yeah. So so after the swine debacle, they go to the Valley of Holiness because they happen on a caravan of pilgrims going there and decide to tag along. Yeah.
And I like that he mentions Chaucer.
Yeah.
I do. I like that he gives the nod, because he's like, yeah, I know.
And but it turns out that the well in the Valley of Holiness had run dry.
Yes. As they learned from another band of pilgrims who had just been there.
which ironically only made the Valley of Holiness more of a tourist destination.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're like, oh, we have to go. We have to find out like what sin has caused the miracle to stop. Ah,
yeah,
they're so excited.
Did one of the priests take a bath again?
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's because back when there's a backstory involving a bath and a monk taking a bath out of, I don't know. They claim they were tempted by Satan to bathe.
And the water supposedly stopped until they all repented and then started back up again afterwards.
Yeah, repented bathing. And so when they get there, these are some really filthy monks. Like more filthy than your average medieval person, which is saying a lot. Like they have not only taken the vows of poverty and chastity and forgetting the other one, but they've taken one of just like not bathing.
Yeah,
like they won't bathe at all. So yeah,
and it turns out that the Yankees not the only one interested in the problem of the dried well, because Merlin's there too.
Yes, Merlin is there trying to fix it. So he's trying to get a street court cred back as the hottest magician in the land. And frankly, working a miracle, not the worst way to do that.
Yeah. And the priests are like, "Oh, hey, why don't you take over, since we know your stuff actually really works? You blew up his tower."
Right?
And he's like, "Oh, sorry, I can't do it. Professional courtesy and all that."
Yeah, Merlin is not pleased. Yeah, you're right. He tries to, he's like, no, let him try. This is just me. I'm nuts. I did highlight Black Robed because different. I was trying to figure out. I was curious as to what kind of monks these guys were, and ones who wear some who wear black robes are the Jesuits and the doesn't matter, and another group. So I was curious about that, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, two things. One, the story, the events of this story probably predate the founding of most monastic orders.
Fair point.
Two, are we sure those robes actually started out as black?
Oh, good point.
They never bathe.
They never bathe. They probably don't wash. Oh my god. Just imagine. I can't. No, I don't want to. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. And but so while
I do like how miracles are achieved by taking the waters when no one's looking.
Yeah. So while the Yankee is waiting for delivery of supplies from his chemical factories in Camelot.
Yeah. And let's be clear, that is why he gave Merlin more time.
Yeah. He decides, well, also because it'd look better if Merlin were to give up.
True. Yeah.
So he decides to play tourist for a bit and go see the hermits.
Yeah. Who apparently do well when surrounded by pilgrims. I'm like, that's not very hermity, but okay.
And and watches one hermit whose shtick was standing up on a pole, bowing very quickly.
Yeah.
And so he turns that hermit into a sewing machine.
Yeah. It's so weird. But it makes sense. I mean, God, okay. So yeah. and okay. Yeah, I can't even. I'm sorry, I'm not finding that part, but I know the part you're talking about.
Yeah.
I just found him like starting to have his gradually coming to have a mysterious and shuddery reverence for this girl. That would be Sandy.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, here we go. And okay, and yeah, and again we see somebody going around a knight going around with one of the signs.
Oh yeah, because he'd made it a point to make knights look ridiculous by turning them into walking advertisements.
Yep, yep. And also hoping that some of it would work. Like, I mean, he's trying to. He's one of his factories. They're making soap. They're trying to convince the nobility to use soap.
And apparently that factory is a bit too close to Camelot for comfort because of the fumes.
Yeah, the fumes are bad. Yeah, there is a lot that goes into making soap, and it does not all smell good. The finished product usually does, but the actual making of it, not so much. Lancelot like hangs out on the roof a lot. But yeah, it this is great, and he does mention that let's see, I think this is near where you're a pilgrim and $1 a piece, $1.50 a piece. Saint Stylite patronized by the nobility, patent applied for. Yeah, because that was one of the first things he did was he set up a patent office.
Yep.
In Camelot.
Yeah.
You can't not laugh. Okay, so restoration of the fountain. Let's move on.
Yeah, so while all this was going on, he had sneakily gone down into the well and patched the hole.
Yeah. Oh, and he measured it first.
Yep.
And he pulled up the chain that held the bucket, and he saw like how far down the rust went on the chain. And then he just asked someone, "Hey, is this fountain usually full?" And they're like, yes, but clearly someone has sinned, so it's not now. And it was evident from the chain that, yeah, usually because the rust didn't start until just a little ways, down. Yeah.
And then, but so he has the area cleared, and then while he sets up, and then puts on a hell of a show.
Yeah, he does. He performs and he exorcises the well, essentially, or exorcises evil spirits from the well, which Merlin can't do.
Yeah, so, complete with fireworks.
Yep. The thing for you to do is to go home and work the weather, John W. Merlin. Like, what? That has to be a reference from Twain's time that I didn't get. I want to know who John W. was.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there is a huge joke there that I'm not getting.
Or it could just be the Yankee just naming people.
Oh, that's fair, because he does that.
Yeah.
All right. Yep, that's already okay. So he uses fireworks and a bunch of scary words.
Yep.
Written in big weird fonts. Yes, a bunch of scary words that aren't words. And trust me, the first one starts with Constantinople, but after that, it's really hard to pronounce any of this stuff.
Well, I think one's just like a run-on sentence with no spaces.
Yeah, I think they're mostly, I want to say they're German because he mentioned the German language earlier in the chapter. But the funny the funny part for me was that it could be German, but I can't tell because there are no spaces. But Yeah, but it is funny too because he pronounced it and he said, you have to say, well, he didn't say you had to say it perfectly, but apparently Merlin like tried to write these things out phonetically and spent like a lot of time trying to figure out how to pronounce it properly to make the same green or to make the same fire happen.
Well, and like one or like the final one, which is just like what you would get if you like spammed the keyboard randomly.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if anyone can see that, but it's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy pants. Yeah.
Is supposedly the name of the demon that is, and it's so powerful that if you just speak the name of the demon, you'll die.
Mm-hmm.
And Merlin's like, wow, like the demon's own mother couldn't have said that better than you, Sir Boss.
Yes. It's the one time. I think the one time. I'm not sure. It's the first time definitely that Merlin actually compliments the Yankees. So
yeah.
And then I love this too because the time has come, Father. He's talking to the abbot. I'm about to pronounce the dread name and command the spell to dissolve. Blah blah blah. Brace yourselves. And then it's BGWJJILLIGKKK. It's like how did that even pronounced at all?
Yeah.
Like I actually tried. I was like, this might be really funny if it's pronounceable, but it's not for me.
Yeah. And then an immense firework display and water starts seeping out from under the chapel because he had set up a pump.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And science. Or engineering. Yeah, engineering, science. That'll work. And he didn't well, I'm gonna do you want to move on to the to him oh yeah, here it is. Merlin spent 3 months working enchantments to try to find out the deep trick of how to pronounce that name and outlive it, but he didn't arrive.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fun.
And then he convinces the abbot that actually it is okay to bathe.
Yeah. The original diagnosis of the bath being the sin that stopped the water coming was not. And also, we kind of skipped over the fact that the original story was this monastery was originally built in a place that was kind of like a desert, which sounds very weird for England, but okay.
Yeah.
But a place where there wasn't a brook, there wasn't a river, they didn't have access to fresh water. Yeah. And so the abbot went prayed and prayed and prayed, and then water just spurted forth from a stone or something. And which is funny because there's actually a story in the Old Testament where Moses like hits a rock twice. Yeah, I'm sorry, twice.
Yeah, no, there are two different stories where like one's like God's like, okay, hit the rock, and Moses hits the rock, and then he's like, and God's like, the next time around is God's like, okay, just talk to the rock. Mm-hmm. And Moses hits the rock, and like God's like, oh, you done fucked up, you're not gonna see the promised land.
Yeah, you're not gonna see the promised land, sorry. And also our religion doesn't have an afterlife yet,
so remember, God doesn't like it when you get your rocks off.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so but the abbot, okay, so supposedly way back when, the original abbot's prayers were answered, and then the guys were tempted by the other monks were tempted by Satan. They were like, we want to build a bath that the spring feeds into. Well, all of that's fine, but one of the funny things that the Yankee observes when he gets there is that it's not a spring, it's a well. They just dug a well. So this whole story is now every part of this story is suspect.
Yeah.
Anyway, because it's
Well, and the thing is, the Yankee suspects that someone just patched the hole the first time around too.
Yeah, exactly, and probably did.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely did, because otherwise the well would have stayed, dry. Yeah. So he convinces the abbot that I don't think the original sin was the bath, and the abbot's like, I would really like a bath.
Yeah.
It's so sad. It's like he's so grimy. So yeah.
And he goes to, see another hermit cave, and it turns out that there's a secret telegraph office there.
Yes.
Because his people who are taught to seek out, lit areas and establish telegraph offices, and telephone offices.
Yeah.
Saw the pyrotechnic display, and so set up a telegraph office there.
Yeah. And they don't necessarily tell anyone where those things are, and they usually set them up by night because they're trying to be very secret about it, which I understand. The Yankee is worried that, like, if the church finds any of this, they might think it's devilry
witchcraft.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
witchcraft. So so he finds a guy, and he gets to talk to Clarence.
Yeah.
the never correctly named Clarence. Well, I mean, a couple of times. There's something wrong, Clarence, and he had set up what he called my West Point, right, which was a military academy. Yeah. And so they're getting ready for war. We haven't gotten to the part where the king is dreaming. Have we gotten to the part where the king is dreaming about war with Gaul, which was France?
No, the king is wanting to.
Okay.
Like, it's just kind of mentioned in the background here and there.
Yeah, he's like he's daydreaming. He's literally daydreaming about it.
Yeah.
He's like, that would be so cool. Go kick some Gaulish ass or whatever.
Yeah. And so the Yankee, before he had left to, go do his night errantry bit, had gotten the king to sign on for with the idea of a professional army, and also that that they would have to meet certain requirements. Unfortunately, the Yankee hadn't been able to put the requirements in place before he had to leave.
No, and that's unfortunate, because what do the Middle Ages people do? Well, they're all the sons of noble houses.
Yeah.
That are in there, and he was trying to create. The Yankee was trying to create a military that was more of a meritocracy, where you had to earn what he called it do competitive examination.
Yeah.
Just like the army and
so basically a modern military.
Yeah, a modern military, essentially. Yeah, absolutely. Where you have to perform certain tasks, you have to perform them well and to a certain degree. And if you can't, you get to go practice until you can.
Yeah, where if you want to get a promotion, you've got to stand before the promotion board and answer all the questions. Well,
I was going to say, you know more about this than I do.
Well, yeah, I never actually stood before a promotion board because I got out as a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't start going before boards until you get into the NCO ranks.
Okay. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because my dad and my brother are both in the army, and they're both my brother's a Gulf War veteran, my dad's a Korean veteran. And my other brother was in the Air Force. He's not a war vet, but he is a veteran of the Air Force. And that just turned out to where that was just where he got stationed and stuff,
Yeah.
So I know a little bit, but I know more like anecdotal stuff, like stories that they tell about, like what their jobs were like and
Yeah.
things like that. But I don't know any of the technical. Okay, so moving on. Sorry to the people.
And so they have the examination with some. Well, okay, no, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because he also learns that King Arthur is on his way to the Valley of Holiness.
That's super important. Very soon. That's going to be super important. Yes.
And turns out that there is another magician in the Valley of Holiness whose claimed abilities is he can tell what anyone is doing anywhere.
Yeah. And this reminded me, and he claims to be from the Far East, right? And that reminded me so much of the 1990s when everybody was like Eastern medicine and Eastern practices and Eastern blah, 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 as alternative medicine. And it was such a big deal.
And so he was like answering all kind of, questions about what's going on, it like with the Emperor of China, with the Sultan, and so the Yankee's like, oh, okay, so you can know what anyone is doing, right? And he's like, I'd like to ask you something. And so he puts his hand behind his back, and in my mental image of the story, he's flipping the guy off behind his back. And he asks the guy, what am I doing with my hand?
Yeah.
The guy is like, oh, I only do it for, I only do it for nobility.
That's his out. And in my head, because I am not as funny as you are, I imagined him like holding up a number, like 2, 3, 4 fingers or something, and the guy, but that was, yours is better. I like yours better. And he's like, oh, I can only do it for nobility. And the abbot immediately is like, oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Sure. And you're like, I was like, I don't know if you had this question, Ring, but I was like, why? Why does that make it's this whole hierarchy business, I guess. Because the abbot kind of explains, he's like, no, it makes sense that God would grant you this power to watch over the most important people. I'm like, wow.
And so he's like, okay, what's King Arthur doing?
Yes. And this is where that moment with the telephone before that telephone call to Camelot becomes very important indeed.
Yeah, because the mystic says, oh, he's sleeping. And the Yankee replies, no, he rides. He's coming to the Valley of Holiness.
Mm-hmm. And the mystic is like, no, he's not. They're going to the sea. They're going north. I think it's north.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then go ahead.
So, they go back and forth and like, oh, well, we'll see who's right in a couple days when he shows up or doesn't.
Yeah. So, that's right. Because the Yankee says, no, he's coming here.
Yeah.
And he's going to be here. And the abbot flies into a flurry of activity, like, oh, the king might be coming here, so we need to be ready. But then the mystic like convinces the abbot not to do anything. Mm-hmm. So when the king shows up, the abbot's left with his dick in his hand, metaphorically speaking. Yes, and he's like, "Oh God, ring bells!" The nuns start pouring out of the convent. The monks pour out of the abbey. Everybody's like trying to desperately show, no, we totally are prepared for you to. Oh God, do we have any hogs butchered? Like, what's gonna happen? It's like, how do you? And this is actually an interesting thing, because this is something that went far into the Renaissance, like far into Shakespeare's time, where you were expected. And now I don't know if this was expected of abbeys and nunneries necessarily. But if you were of the nobility, you were expected to be ready to host guests at any time. If they were noble. So you just had to be, especially if they outranked you. Like you had to be prepared. And that meant having good wine on hand. That meant having plenty of food on hand. And if you didn't and the king came by, oh, it could be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are social consequences to this moment.
But so we had, so the Yankee manages to keep his reputation cemented.
Yeah, he stays the coolest magician in the land for sure.
And we get to the military examination.
Oh, yeah.
Where the Yankee, takes, shows his West Point graduates off. And the examiners have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Which is, it's funny, but it's also like, okay. And we get this weird look in the, all right, so he gives some stuff about the church. There's this case with this young girl and her husband, and it's weird because she's appealing to an older law, and the church is like, yeah, but still you didn't tell. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down.
Because the bishop was gonna was gonna put her out because she didn't give him the right of primogeniture.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
But she was like, but he's a bishop. He's supposed to be celibate.
Yeah. And also she did not, this is so messed up, but also because she did not want to be forced into that situation. I'm avoiding a certain word here for your channel. Yeah. But because she didn't want to be forced into that situation, she also did not ask. And because she was young and a woman, he was kind of holding her estate for her for when she got married.
Well, yeah, because he was her feudal lord.
Right, exactly. So he was her feudal lord. And so even though she was a relatively, had a lot of wealth coming her way once she married, she didn't ask his permission to marry. Yeah. And she married a man beneath her station as well.
And King Arthur splits the baby.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
By going with both your cases have merit, but God's law supersedes man's law, so the bishop gets your land.
Yep. Because divine right of kings, and therefore our entire feudal system, which also keeps me on the throne, Arthur doesn't say out loud. Yeah. But yeah, it's just terrible. And then oh gosh.
But the West, and of course the West Pointers aren't accepted as officers because while the Yankee was gone, the king and his knights had chosen their criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And their criteria was the person had to be a member of a noble house for at least 3 generations.
Yep.
Because feudalism.
God, it's so And again, we get a comment from the Yankee where he's thinking about the church and the rest of the aristocracy, and he says, where every man, just men, but okay, whatever. Where every man in the state has a vote, brutal laws are impossible. I'm just gonna point at Texas real quick.
Yeah, just wave in the general direction of Texas.
Looking at you, Texas. Also looking at the Tennessee state legislature, but we don't have. Well, we're not going to get off on that tangent, but definitely Texas. No, unfortunately, if enough politicians decide that they care more about playing to a wedge issue for their base than they actually do about the people they're supposed to be serving, yeah, you can get brutal laws.
Well, also if you breed enough gerrymanders.
That too. Yeah. If you redraw those lines often enough, for sure.
Yeah.
God. Okay, trying to avoid really bad language on your channel. Okay, so let's talk about. Oh my word. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about how the So the king basically just he and the other some of the other folks just basically just changed all of the West Point. I'm saying West Point, not as the real West Point, but the one that he's writing about here. He tried to recreate it, which, you know, that name carries a lot of respect in our culture, and it does to me as well. So we're not dissing. I just want to be very clear. We're talking about the fictional West Point in here that was set in the 6th century in Camelot. All right.
Yeah.
Which also didn't really happen. So, not dissing actual real West Point at all. But yeah, so you had to be so to the 3rd generation, or was it to the 4th? There was some weird. It doesn't matter. It's not that important. But yeah, you had to be, because that's right, because there was one guy that he had one guy that the Yankee did who almost met the criteria, but his people had only been landed gentry for 3 generations, not 4.
Oh yeah.
That's
and
right.
So but the Yankee decides to figures out a way around that, where he'd make an elite King's Guard of landed gentry and just staff the rest of the army with commoners and have those commoners officered by his West Point graduates.
There you go. And I mean, let's face it, that's what used to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Except now, instead of bringing, a pitchfork into battle, well, they might still be doing that, but at least the commoners are being trained by people with military training. Yeah. They're not just fodder for the other side.
Yeah.
So, which in a lot of military battles, that happened. Because if your lord called you to go fight, you had to go fight, whether you were good at it or not. It didn't matter.
But the Yankee does have another project that he's getting ready for. Is he wants to disguise himself and just mingle among the commoners.
Yes, which was it? I don't think it was Tiberius. Which Roman emperor is rumored to have done this very thing? There was a Roman emperor that we think may have done this.
Shame. It's a shame Noodle's not on.
It is really a shame. Dang it. All right.
Shame history isn't here.
We'll know sometime, because you'll know before I do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's driving me nuts. I want to say it's Tiberius, but that's probably wrong. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, but that's what I instantly thought of. And then also, this goes along with the Arthurian legends. There is a story that Arthur did this, and so did Henry in Shakespeare's Henry V, one of the histories. So did Henry V. He dressed up like one of his own soldiers and went from campfire to campfire just to see where they were morale-wise before a big battle.
And Arthur thinks this is a grand idea.
He does, but he doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah. And so, the Yankee and Arthur have a bit of a training montage where he tries to teach King Arthur how to look like a commoner, but he can't do it.
Like, don't stand up so straight. Look down. No, further. Lower your eyes. It's really, and it's because, it's a really quick training montage too, because there are people on horseback who are dressed well, coming down toward them.
Yeah, there's that, and and he eventually just yanks King Arthur off the road. But there's another training montage where he takes a whole day in this random ass field, trying to teach King Arthur how to walk like a commoner.
right? And yeah, like walk like a regular man. And yeah, and it's almost impossible. And again, it goes back to this theme that's been running through the whole book about how people are like common people are kept down because they don't realize they're oppressed, because they've been oppressed so long they think it's normal. And according to the Yankee, and frankly, there's some, I mean, not this doesn't bear up fully to history, but there's some truth to this. The useless nobles who aren't doing anything except taxing the food out of people's mouths, are they've been bred to believe, like Morgan Le Fay, that this is their right, and they have and I mean, if they do the smallest thing, like her paying that grandmother for the life of her grandson, her people would love her for that.
Yeah.
And it's it turns your stomach to think about it.
Yeah, and like in the nature versus nurture debate, Connecticut Yankee leans very hardly on the nurture side.
Very hard on nurture, yeah. And I think personally, I think it's a mix of both, but for sure there is a lot, and he leans so hard on nurture. I think he thinks it's more important than anything. I don't, but then he does have a nature moment when he talks about all of the ancestors going all the way back, and it is kind of amazing because he says back to Adam or a grasshopper or a monkey, and I'm like, oh, that's right, Mark Twain would have totally known about Darwin. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I got very excited when I read that line. I was like, oh, yay, not that.
So, and they have there's a bit of another scene where we see the Yankee start to empathize with people, and the king empathizes a bit as well when they go to the smallpox house.
Yeah, that was another one that made me sad. But this is why we read literature and do art, is because it's to explore.
It makes us feel.
It makes us feel, and we like the feels, even the bad ones. Yeah, it is so. Oh, yeah, really quickly. Yeah, he did his honest best, but Lord, it was not great things. He looked as humble as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Talking about really trying to look humble. It's not good. Okay, I'm just gonna skip right over the chapter entitled "Drilling the King." You just talked about it.
Yeah.
And that just sounds so different now. Okay, the smallpox side. Yeah, here we are. Sorry. I apologize. I couldn't help it. It's okay. 20. I couldn't help it because I'm weird. 29. 29? Am I reading those Roman numerals correctly? Thank you. Thank you for Arabic numerals. Thank you so much. I just want to thank the golden age of Islam, or whenever that came about. Thank you for Arabic numerals. These things are ridiculous. Okay. So anyway, the smallpox cut. This is rough. And by the way, hey, if you're worried about the COVID vaccine, read this chapter.
Yeah.
Because the smallpox vaccines were mandated by the U.S. government back in the day. And you know what we don't have in the U.S. anymore?
Smallpox.
Yeah.
In fact, fun fact.
Yeah.
What in the modern day, the only people who get smallpox vaccines are military members who are deploying.
Mm-hmm. Because we don't have to. Regular citizens don't have to worry about it, unless we're going somewhere. Like maybe Doctors Without Borders. Maybe some of them get it, but.
Which is kind of a good thing, because the smallpox vaccination sucks.
Yeah, that's what I've seen it on older people in my family. It leaves a big ass scar.
Well, yeah, I had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they do is they like gouge out a section of your skin with a needle that's been infected with, cowpox.
Oh, yeah.
Or, or weakened smallpox. But and then you've got to let it sit and fester and just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, honestly, like, to talk about the military for a second, like, that's why, my parents are as conservative as people get, pretty much. And they had no problem getting back. They got vaccinated for COVID as soon as they could, because my dad was like, they gave me so many jabs in the military. Like, I know vaccines work. Like, why would I, why would I not trust a vaccine? That's stupid.
Well, and, the Yankee freaks out and tries to get King Arthur to get out of the, to stay out of the hut, because he was vaccinated, so he knows he won't get smallpox.
Right. He's like, I'm safe against this. And this is great. There's, no. I was about to talk about another series of books that involve time travel, where a smallpox vaccination came up. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
We're sticking with it. Yeah, we're here. I'm sorry. We're in the smallpox hut. So yeah, he is desperate to keep Arthur out of here, because this is a highly contagious disease and it is incredibly deadly.
Yeah. And the, the peasants in the hut, or the lady, because she's the only survivor, tries to get him to leave, because, hey, if the church finds out, you were here, you're going to be persona non grata.
Yeah. Because back then, and in some places even still now, people believed that disease was a punishment from God.
Yeah.
As were things like birth defects and other stuff.
Yeah. Though, I mean, arguably this is like this is an example of the church doing a good thing, but in the wrong way.
Exactly.
They're with the wrong. Well, because, arguably they are, they are actually accomplishing something of a quarantine.
Yes.
But, for with the wrong rationale behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, later on in the same area of the world, you're going to see the plague, and they're going to have that practice of shutting up whole families together, sick and well together. Yeah. And that was a absolutely horrible, inhumane practice. Yeah. Again, it was for a good reason, but absolutely horrendous in the bad way to do it. That's bad.
In other words, hey, quarantines and vaccines work. Just saying.
They do. Yes, they do. And also, we know how to do them properly now. We're not doing them in horrible ways. So let's all be clear about that, for sure. I sprang to the king and said in his ear, "Out of the door, on the instant, sir. The woman is dying of that disease that wasted the skirts of Camelot 2 years ago." And he did not budge. Of a truth I shall remain, and likewise help. I mean, I admire Arthur in this moment. I really do, because he has he doesn't know where the Yankee is from. He has no reason other than the fact that he's a magician. Arthur believes himself to be anointed by God. Why would God curse him with smallpox?
Yeah. And in fact, if I remember right, Arthur actually takes the woman's dying daughter back down from the second floor, so she can hold him in her, so she can hold her in her hands.
Yeah.
And it's a really somber scene where you basically have Arthur and the Yankee, showing empathy for this family that had been stricken by smallpox and left to die by the church.
Yeah, he says, Here was heroism at its last and loftiest possibility. And I'm going to cry if I read any more of that sentence, but it's that's the king carrying this dying 15-year-old girl down from the loft so that her mother can hold her daughter as she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, the king and the Yankee go on to this other village.
Yeah.
Where they lynch, where the villagers just finished with a lynching. Because their feudal lord had been murdered.
Oh, that's right. Wait, hang on. I'm sorry. The tragedy of the manor house. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a fire. So yeah. Okay. So no, I'm sorry. Take the lead on this one. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
It was getting really late last night when I got to this part. I only have like one thing highlighted.
Yeah.
Remember.
So. But it and the Yankee and the king stay with this family. And it turns out that the family's the man of the house's brothers-in-law or cousins or something had actually done the deed, but they had to act with equal fervor lest they draw suspicion.
Yeah, and they didn't they hang him so that it might look like suicide?
No, the people who did it actually got off scot-free. They just randomly hung some other random family.
Oh, that's horrible. Wait, there was no reason? Wait, because it says if he hanged himself, he was willing to lose his property to his lord, so let him be. If others hanged him, be like they had the right. Let him have. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Oh yeah. They saw. Oh yeah. The king and the Yankee come across the hanged bodies first, and then they come across the mob of peasants.
Okay, that's right. Because he wants it because the Yankee wants to cut the. At first, they come across one body hanging from a tree, and they want to, and of course, the Yankee says we have to cut him down. This is wrong. Yeah. This is so wrong. And the king's like, nope. He either did it himself, in which case he's damned, and also, but the property thing, and I love that he just goes straight to the property thing. That's messed up. Anyway.
Well, I mean, leave it to a noble to be more concerned with the property issue.
Right. Yeah. Hey, we can't. Also, in a way, it makes sense. He doesn't want to mess with the crime scene.
Yeah.
It's like he either did it himself or someone else did it, and he may have deserved it. So let's wait and see. That actually is kind of sensible. So yeah. We'll give that. But then they find more bodies. Grisly excursion. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not good. And then and then the mob warns the king that this is not a safe place for strangers, which that is just that's like you're headed the wrong way in Texas Chainsaw Massacre moment. Like it's not good. Oh, that's second now that I've dissed Texas.
Texas can take it.
They can take it. I have relatives there. They're fine. All right. Yes. Here is where we use here's where they use what the good that they just did to get them out of this angry mob situation.
Yeah.
They're like, we just came from a house where people died of the spotted disease. Get away from us. And that is quite effective.
Yep.
Yeah. They're like, okay.
And so they shack up with, this family.
Mm-hmm.
And the Yankee decides to, splash some cash around and throws this big banquet for the guy and other neighbor, other village high ups like the blacksmith and the guy who runs the general store.
Mm-hmm.
And and the guy, like the guy who's hosting them gets to have a bit of a moment in the sun when when his wife is bringing out the stools to sit on, and and he turns to her and says, "Oh, that's enough." Like he's enjoying this like show of wealth,
yeah,
that the Yankee bestowed on him.
Yeah, and this is not the first time.
Yeah,
that the Yankee does like to, because it's so little to him, and also he literally is not printing. That's wrong. They don't have
minting.
paper money. He is minting money.
Yeah,
at this point, so it's really no big deal, but it means so much to the people he comes across.
And
Mm-hmm.
and he gets into a conversation where he tries to get the villagers to understand that it's not how much money you make that matters. It's what your money can spend.
Yeah.
Or what your money can pay for that actually is the measure of wealth.
Yeah.
And they don't get it.
No, they don't get it.
They just fall back on, but our wages are higher.
Yeah, and it's and we get another moment, another abolitionist moment, and yeah, and also that he literally, the narrator is literally thinking this is depressing.
And we also learn that the Yankee had invented some interesting new gun wallets. The Miller guns, which like held a certain amount of coinage, which you could also use to shoot with lethal force.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing what metal can do. It's reminiscent of when people would just like those moments in a lot of early wars with cannon where people would just start throwing anything metal into the cannon because that shrapnel could just tear through somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or early or what blackjacks were or what where you'd have a decoy coin purse that was just filled with lead.
Mm-hmm.
That if you came across the mugger, you could bash him across the head with it.
Yep, and you were that highly effective. Highly effective.
But then Arthur ruins it by coming out and trying to talk like a farmer.
Oh God, yeah, it's bad. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find an example. Oh, the last remark was for the king to quiet him. Hang on. Nope. Wait. Oh, hey, say something, because this is like totally.
Yeah, but he's talking about like onion berries and.
Oh, right. It's all the. How does he not know what food is called?
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like him, like if he had said, "Isn't it onion season?" and maybe even that's hard. That's a bit of a stretch. But, I mean, how do you not know? Oh my God. Okay. I mean,
so the
If he said something about like you should only plant onions under the full moon in spring, or in fall, that would have been weird. But the onion berries, what the seriously?
Yeah. And so the villagers are like, okay, this guy is like crazy, or he's like some kind of a convict. We need to lynch him.
Yep.
So
we need to murder him.
Yeah, so the Yankee and King Arthur, run off and get treed and cross to another tree, and then the Yankee's like, hey, maybe we should cross back. But then one of the peasants picks the wrong tree and they're found out.
Yep.
And they're about to be, and they managed to make something of a defensive stand until, of course, the villagers bring out the fire. But happen to be rescued by a passing noble.
Yes.
Who then captures King Arthur and the Yankee to be sold as slaves.
Yep. This is not going to go well. No. And we've seen what happens to slaves in this culture already. It's rough.
Yeah.
There's some rough scenes.
Though in Arthur's estimation, the dignity, the indignity heaped on him by the actual physical slavery isn't as much isn't as bad as the fact that the slaver is asking half what he thinks he's worth.
Yeah. That's oh my gosh. It's everything in terms of money. Yeah. Everything. And I part of me gets it. I mean, we're taught, well, I know, at least I know I was, taught not to love money, taught that, fine, don't worry about it too much. But, honestly, try living without it in any society. That is no fun, and very difficult. So, yeah, it's important, but this is about pride. This isn't, it's like, how dare you sell me for less than
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have a problem with slavery. I have a problem with the fact that I don't have a high enough price tag.
Yeah. Though,
dude.
If I remember right, the slaver priced him like that because he stands too arrogantly.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, he doesn't act like a slave.
Yeah.
He can't. He can't even act like a farmer.
Yeah.
He can't act like a free man. How's he gonna? My word.
And so they get to London. And after we see some more pro-abolition, scenes of the Yankee and the King being, in the place of slavery.
Yeah.
The Yankee breaks out and goes to mug the slave master so that he can free the king and the rest of the slaves and they can escape. But he mugs the wrong guy and gets landed in jail.
And you just have to wonder how. Okay.
But the slaves did kill the slave master.
Yes.
But were also captured by the guard, who were going to hang them on the next day. So the Yankee gets word to Camelot, and Clarence that he needs the knights to come down, and he'll have a red armband to let them know who they need to take commands from.
Mm-hmm.
And then tries to essentially trade up his outfits until he can pass as a nobleman again.
Yeah.
But is a bit too clever for his own good.
Yeah.
And accidentally runs right into a guard after trying to get the guard off his tail.
Does he not remember faces? I did ask myself that question at this point, because I'm like, how?
Well, so what happened was he told the shop owner that like he was going to flesh out the escaped slave.
Right.
And the slave would be in the back, and to tell the guard to watch the front in case he tried to double around.
Right.
Well, the guard went to the back, and so he ran right into the guard.
Okay, I'm sorry. So it's more of a comedy of errors. It's not. Yeah, it's not because he's not noticing things. Okay.
Yeah, it's he spins a story, and then the guard does the logical thing of, oh, I'll go around the back and catch the slave as he runs out.
Yeah, because that's where, I mean, you're not going to run out the front.
Yeah, and so he is caught by the guard because he's too clever for his own good.
Yeah.
And of course, that moves the execution up considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And so there, Arthur and the Yankee are stood at the gallows with a bunch of other slaves.
Yep.
Which are dropping one by one until the noose is around Arthur's neck.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the Yankee looks to the east, and in comes Lancelot and a full cohort of knights, all riding bicycles.
Riding bicycles. I mean, it's not a literal cavalry, I guess, because there aren't horses, but it works. It works.
But and we later learned via Clarence that the knights had been practicing on these new contraptions that the Yankee had dreamed up and were eager to demonstrate.
Yeah, and I gotta wonder, how did you imagine these bicycles? Because I was thinking, and I don't know enough about bicycle history to have any idea, but I was imagining like the ones with the giant front wheel and like the two little back wheels.
Well,
just the thought of people in armor on one of those.
So here's the thing: the mental picture of the bicycle wasn't really what did it for me. What did it for me was my brain set this scene to bicycle race.
Oh, okay.
So picture this: the Yankee and King Arthur stood at the gallows, and all of a sudden you hear Freddie Mercury's glorious voice, bicycle, bicycle, and then the knights come riding in.
Yes, absolutely.
Like shot as if it's like a glorious charge.
And it was. I mean, I guess it certainly would have made an impression.
Yeah.
Like, what are those contraptions? Like, what? And also for us, hilarious, because we know what bicycles are. Excuse me. Okay, yeah. So.
And the knights slaughter all the people, which is actually basically as brushed over in the narrative as I just did.
Yeah, it's pretty much like, we kind of killed the whole village, but we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't talk about our war crimes. And
yeah. Well, actually,
there's
a banner for that.
You should watch us play D&D.
Yeah.
Okay, so
on.
Oh no.
Hashtag we don't talk about our war crimes.
Yes, there we go. Thank you.
But
And then they're back at Camelot.
And there's not really much
Really
time, much time to get into much else because Sir Sangramore has returned from grailing.
Yeah, and now we got that duel. That duel
Yep.
got to happen. Oh my gosh.
And luckily,
Duels are so stupid. Sorry, go ahead.
well, and luckily, a new law had been passed by the king that allowed people to bring whatever weapons they wished to duels.
Oh, that is very lucky.
Yeah.
I think someone's gonna bring a gun to a sword fight.
Well, not
Or a,
not at first.
or a lance fight.
First, so first, we have Sir Sangramore in all his knightly armor that had been enchanted by Merlin to make him invisible to enemies.
Yeah.
And here in the other corner, we have the Yankee dressed in normal clothes with a rope around the saddle horn.
As he is not getting back in that armor.
Yeah.
Ever. This is not. And I frankly don't blame him, although, I was a little concerned, but I was like, nah, I wouldn't put it back on either.
So
maybe a chainmail shirt.
So, the Yankee basically plays to the crowd by pretending not to see Sir Sangramore.
Yeah. Sure.
Until he goes to the final lethal charge.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Where the Yankee just swings the lariat around his head a couple times and
yeah. He cowboys him.
Yeah.
Essentially. It's like, y'all haven't figured this out yet, but look what I can do. So here's the thing, though. I get him playing to the crowd by pretending that the dude was invisible, but was he invisible? I mean, had the crowd convinced themselves that he was invisible, or was he only invisible to his opponents? And that was the
I think the enchantment was only his opponents couldn't see him.
Okay, because it's very convenient, that enchantment. Yeah. Okay.
And but it's it's it was sold to Camelot and the gentry as Sir Sangramore versus the boss, but the Yankee sees it differently. The Yankee sees it as this is his chance to dismantle chivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And so he proceeds to unhorse a few other knights up to and including Lancelot himself with his lariat. But Merlin steals it.
I was about to say, and then Merlin steals it. Because, well, I'm sure Merlin, holds a grudge. And I, from his point of view, I get it.
And spins a lie about how it had been an enchanted rope from the depths of the Sea King and how it could only be used 8 times.
Okay.
So Sangramore wants another shot, and he gets another shot, but not in the way he wanted, because the Yankee had also brought a couple of guns to the sword fight.
It's like, okay, sure, we're doing this. That's what.
Yeah. and then proceeds to give out a challenge where he'll take on all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of knights agree, and he kills half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
Down where he's down to his last bullet, but they decide to lay off.
Yeah.
And
The day was mine. Knight errantry was a doomed institution.
Yep. And the Yankee, basically makes the challenge permanent and has it put down on a plaque.
Yeah.
And we get a time skip.
Yeah, we do. 3 years later for chapter 30, I don't know.
Where
Roman
the
numeral.
Yankee and Sandy are happily married.
Yeah.
And have a darling baby girl named Hello Central.
No, that's right. That is right. Oh my god. That is adorable.
Because yeah. she named him after his long, Sandy named the baby after the Yankees' long lost love that he cried for in the night.
Which is very big of her, really.
Yeah.
That's very sweet. She has a big heart. I like that.
But, Hello Central is sick, and so everyone is concerned, and so Sandy, so they go off to France to take the country air.
Mm-hmm. Because that cures things.
Yep. And essentially the fall of Camelot happens while they're gone.
Yeah.
And then the Yankee comes back, discovers all this, and discovers that it had been a ploy by the church to get him out. And so he and some of his West Pointers hole up in a cave and fortify it with like electric wire and Gatling guns.
Yeah. Oh, the Gatling guns. That's a great moment.
Yeah.
I'm not going to skip ahead to it.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go.
And basically, we have this almost tragic last stand where, the Yankee, Clarence, and a bunch of boys from his man factories in West Point go up against the entire English armored nobility.
Yeah.
And are like mowing down armored knights with Gatling guns, and knights are like electrocuting themselves on the fence because they don't know better.
And they have carbolic acid traps, and
yeah,
it's kind of badass. It's actually very badass.
Yeah, it's basically like World War I warfare enacted on feudal chivalry.
Yeah.
And I very much take this section of the book as something of a satirical allegory of the Civil War destroying the Southern gentry.
Yeah, I could see that. And that was fine.
Yeah.
Certainly needed to happen. But especially since they weren't about to give it up willingly.
But Merlin gets the last laugh.
He does.
And curses the Yankee to sleep for 1,300 years.
Which is so weird, and yet it's the Crystal Cave and stuff like that. That kind of is what happens to Merlin because of Mimi. But anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, and it is like what of Merlin. It's like the cave they're holed up in is referred to as Merlin's cave.
Okay. Yep. So I wasn't just imagining that parallel. No, basically, the Yankee ends up suffering the fate of Merlin.
And then
to bring it around to the beginning, he's there in that museum to tell all of this to Mark Twain later that night after being plied with scotch.
Yeah, and Mark Twain, finishes reading the manuscript and the the postscript that was left by Clarence.
Oh, I know. The postscript is sad.
And finds the Yankee muttering in a feverish sleep, and he dies. And that's how the book ends.
That's how the book ends. And so we don't, so like you said early on, it's ambiguous. We don't really, it's like, what did he, again, was this just a fever dream from the blow on the head at the beginning? Did any of it actually happen? Is he actually dead, or is he hanging out in a museum in England?
Or is he back in France with Sandy and Hello Central?
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I mean, we just honestly, we don't know. And Twain, son of a bitch. No, I mean, it's so like him.
Well,
I don't know the man, but yeah.
Honestly, I think that ambiguity is part of what makes this great.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that. I mean, it ends with, he was getting up his last effect, but he never finished it. I can agree with you there, because you really kind of get to finish it almost where you want to or how you want to.
Yeah.
And I think depending on, and since the book is so, I mean, he's not subtle about it. It's like I said, he's satirizing social hierarchy,
the antebellum South,
capitalism to a degree, and certainly feudalism, and just all of that. He's basically, there's a lot of threads running through this book. Oh, and also he talks about the dangers of having a centralized church, that you have to separate church and state, otherwise you don't have a free nation. And for that to, and so he basically, it becomes a choose your own ending by the end. Yeah. And that kind of makes sense, because the whole book is asking you to ask questions.
And is asking you to use your mental freedom to be a man, or to be a person.
To be we would say person today, but to be a man, to be a free person.
Yeah, to be more than an automaton.
Right. Yeah, and to also outgrow, or to grow beyond whatever you were raised with. Yeah. Whatever training you were raised with.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, final thoughts?
I love me some Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. This was so much fun.
You have any shilling you want to do?
Oh, not really. I'm working a lot. I'm trying to keep Tuesday nights around 8:00. I'm trying to keep up Wine and Reason. Sometimes I have to skip a week just because I have too much going on at work. So I'm so grateful to be employed again.
Yeah.
So I stayed off for much of last year, but also it's a demanding gig. So yeah. And I play D&D with you most Saturdays. Sometimes we
most
have to
Saturdays.
I know. Next weekend, I'm going to a reproductive rights protest, so that's why.
And it looks like by party consensus, next week will be another hiatus for secular D&D. So we should be back on the 9th.
Yay!
And then but next Sunday, we will get back into the swing of things and finish off our discussion of Westerns by talking about Logan.
I've never Wait,
as in the Wolverine movie, Logan.
Oh my god, because that was what I was thinking of. But I was like, no, that makes
it's sense. A Western. It is a Western.
I can see how it's a Western. Also, a really good movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we'll go to taglines.
Okay. So, remember, you can't find truth in wine or coffee, as it happens, but you can find it in reason.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.